Hello dear friends, this is your personal English coach Professor DC, and in this video we will be understanding an interesting chapter called The Singing Lesson, written by Katherine Mansfield. This video explanation is in English. Before we begin understanding this chapter, a little background on Katherine Mansfield. So who was she? She was a New Zealand short story writer. She was a prominent New Zealand modernist short story writer and a poet who was born and brought up in colonial New Zealand and wrote under the pen name of Katherine Mansfield. She was born on October the 14th, 1888 in Wellington, New Zealand, and she died on 9th of Jan 1923 in France. Some of her famous works include The Garden Party, Miss Brill, The Doll's House, and more. Having understood the background of the writer, let's begin understanding the story. On my screen, you can see the actual story on the left side and meanings of the difficult words on its right to make it very easy for you to understand. So let's begin with the first line. With despair, cold, sharp despair, buried deep in her heart like a wicked knife, Miss Meadows, in cap and gown and carrying a little baton, trod the corridors that led to the music hall. We get to know a couple of things from the first statement itself. So who's the leading character here? Who is the protagonist? It is Miss Meadows. It says Miss, so she is unmarried. It's not written Mrs., it's written Miss. Secondly, we get to know that Miss Meadows is deeply hurt by something. There is something in her heart which is making her feel cold, sharp despair, hopeless. She is feeling hopeless. Now, what is she wearing? She is wearing a cap and a gown, and she is carrying a baton. Now, who carries a baton? Well, it's none other than somebody who teaches music. So here we also get to know that Miss Meadows is a music teacher. She's walking down the cold corridors that led to the music halls. So our guess is right. She is a music teacher and walking down the music hall. Girls of all ages, rosy from the air and bubbling over with that gleeful excitement that comes from running to school on a fine autumn morning, hurried, skipped, fluttered by from the hollow classrooms, and quick came a drumming of voices. A bell rang, a voice-like bird cried, Muriel. So from this sentence we can understand that Miss Meadows taught girls, not of specific grade, not of specific age, but of all ages. And you know, this is a typical classroom environment. The girls were gleeful. What is the meaning of gleeful? Gleeful is joyful. And obviously it is morning, but it is autumn morning. So when does autumn fall? It is the season after summer and before winter. And these girls were moving here and there, and some of them were hurrying here and there, hastening. Maybe all the girls are getting admitted into this music hall to get some lessons from Miss Meadows. So again, one of the girls called out another girl whose name was Muriel loudly. And then there came from the staircase a tremendous knocking. Someone had dropped her dumbbells. So we get to know that in this particular hall there is a staircase, and one of the girls dropped her dumbbells, maybe while entering, while hurrying to the music hall, and therefore a big sound is heard. So you can imagine a classroom situation where music class is gonna begin. All the girls are rushing in and all the girls are happy and joyful, gleeful, and absolutely ready for the class. What's next? The science mistress stopped Miss Meadows. We know that Miss Meadows was feeling hopeless. She was in despair, and all of a sudden, another person, the science mistress, stops her. Good morning, she cried in her sweet, affected drawl. So it's like speaking slowly. Good morning. Isn't it cold? It might be winter. So speaking like this is called drawl, lazily speaking out every word and prolonging every vowel. Miss Meadows, hugging the knife, stared in hatred at the science mistress. So once the science mistress stopped Miss Meadows, they hugged each other. But Miss Meadows didn't like the science mistress, so therefore it is written hugging the knife. And then Miss Meadows looks at the science mistress full of hate in her eyes. Everything about her was sweet, pale, like honey. You would not have been surprised to see a bee caught in the tangles of that yellow hair. So Miss Meadows, the music teacher, was usually a very sweet lady, and that is compared to honey. She had yellow hair, and because Miss Meadows is sweet, it is very possible that bees get caught in the yellow hair. Therefore it's written, you would not have been surprised, because Miss Meadows is a sweet lady. So what is Miss Meadows' reply? It's rather sharp, said Miss Meadows grimly. What is sharp? The weather is sharp, she answered sadly in a very serious tone, in a depressing manner. The other smiled her sugary smile. So looks like the science mistress gave this fake smile to everyone. So to Miss Meadows' answer, she gave another fake smile. You look frozen, she said, her blue eyes opened wide. There came a mocking light in them. So the way in which Miss Meadows replied made the science mistress think that she is upset about something. So here the science mistress is trying to make fun of Miss Meadows by saying that you look cold and frozen, you look sad, you look upset. And she had blue eyes. The science mistress had blue eyes and they opened wide, and she tried to joke. She tried to mock Miss Meadows. Had she noticed anything? She must have noticed something which made her make fun of Miss Meadows. Oh, not quite as bad as that, said Miss Meadows, and she gave the science mistress in exchange for a smile, a quick grimace, and passed on. So, to her mocking comment, Miss Meadows told the science mistress that it's not as bad as you think. I'm alright, I'm good. There is no need to think about it any further. I'm alright. It's not quite as bad as that. Saying this, she gave a strange and twisted expression to the science mistress and then left her. Forms 4, 5 and 6 were assembled in the music hall. Now the students who were music aspirants were divided into several forms, out of which Form 4, 5 and 6 were already present in the music hall to take lessons from Miss Meadows. You can consider these forms as groups. The noise was deafening. On the platform by the piano stood Mary Beasley, Miss Meadows' favorite, who played accompaniments. Now, as we know, all the girls, they hurried and they skipped and made a lot of noises. We know somebody dropped the dumbbells and somebody was shouting, and so there was a lot of noise in the music hall. Deafening means so loud as to make it impossible to hear anything else. So now there was this piano on the stage, on the platform, and besides that there was this girl called Mary Beasley, and she was Miss Meadows' favorite student, and she would play the accompaniment. Now what is an accompaniment? Now in music, an accompaniment is a music that accompanies or goes with something else. A piece of music may have a melody and an accompaniment underneath. So she was the girl who would play the accompaniment. She was turning the music stool. What is a music stool? A stool for the pianist. So she was just turning it round and round. Miss Meadows entered. When she saw Miss Meadows, she gave a loud warning, "Shh, girls!" And Miss Meadows, her hand thrust in her sleeves, the baton under her arms, strode down the center aisle, mounted the steps, turned sharply, seized the brass music stand, planted it in front of her, and gave 2 sharp taps with her baton for silence. As we know, Miss Meadows is in no mood to be good with people. There's a lot of things going on in her heart. She is feeling hopeless. Now, the reason why she's feeling hopeless is not described yet, but we will find out. So, her favorite student, Mary, she notices Miss Meadows entering the music hall. So, she silences all the girls, and Miss Meadows is entering at a rapid pace. And she has a baton in her arms, and she is walking very fast down the center of the aisle. What is an aisle? You will see aisle everywhere. Aisle is in the theater, it's in the plane, where people can easily walk. It is a passage between rows of seats in a building such as church or theater, aircraft or a train. So Miss Meadows quickly came into the hall, walking down the aisle, and she climbed the steps and turned sharply. Immediately she took her stand, on which she had a book placed with notes. So there's a sheet of music which is placed on the stand, from which Miss Meadows can teach. Now this sheet is placed on a stand called the brass music stand, and she placed the stand in front of her, and she made a loud noise with her baton, just like your school teacher does when she expects silence. What does your school teacher do? She taps the duster and says silence. So similarly, Miss Meadows, as she was in no mood, she tapped her baton for silence immediately as soon as she entered the hall. Silence, please, immediately. And looking at nobody, her glance swept over the sea of colored flannel blouses with bobbing pink faces and hands, quivering butterfly hair bows, and music books outspread. As soon as she made herself comfortable, she demanded silence. She said, "Keep quiet, all of you." She was not addressing one girl specifically. She was just taking a look at the crowd of girls which was in front of her, and the girls had a specific uniform, flannel blouses, moving faces. The girls moved their faces up and down, and their hair bows were quivering or trembling, and each and every girl had their books open in front of them. Miss Meadows exactly knew what all the girls were thinking. She knew perfectly well what they were thinking. Mary is in a wax. Miss Meadows knew that the girls were aware from her behavior that Miss Meadows was not feeling good. She was upset. She was feeling hopeless. Now this Miss Meadows herself knew. Well, let them think it. Her eyelids quivered. She tossed her head, defying them. So her eyelids were trembling because of the same feeling, and she tried to resist that quiver. She tried to resist the tremble by moving her head casually. What could the thoughts of those creatures matter to someone who stood there bleeding to death, pierced to the heart by such a letter? So the narrator is trying to tell us that let the girls who were there to learn music think whatever they want to. Their thoughts doesn't matter to Miss Meadows. Why? Because Miss Meadows herself was feeling so much hopeless. She felt as if she was bleeding to death and somebody had pierced her heart. Why? Because of one letter. So now we get to know that it's the letter which made Miss Meadows feel so much hopeless. Here's the letter. I feel more and more strongly that our marriage would be a mistake. Not that I do not love you. I love you as much as it is possible for me to love you or love any woman. But truth to tell, I have come to the conclusion that I'm not a marrying man, and the idea of settling down fills me with nothing but, and the word disgust was scratched out lightly and regret written over the top. So obviously this was a letter from her fiancé. She must have read the letter in the morning while she came to school, and the letter said that her fiancé is not at all ready to get married to Miss Meadows. Her fiancé thought that marrying would be a mistake. And he also says that it's not the fact that I don't love you. I love you as much as I can. But I'm not a person who can live a married life and be settled. And I cannot settle like the other couples, I'm not that kind of a guy. And the word marriage fills the fiancé with. Now he had made one mistake. He could have simply written regret. But initially he wrote disgust and then removed it, striked it out, but it was still readable to Miss Meadows. And then on top of it, the fiancé wrote regret. So it means that the fiancé was feeling disgusted and regretful, both if he got married to Miss Meadows. Now this is what made her mad this morning. The person with whom Miss Meadows was gonna be married, that person says that marriage would be a disgust, a mistake, and a regret. Now this is the very reason why Miss Meadows is mad this morning. Basil. Miss Meadows stalked over to the piano, and Mary Beasley, who was waiting for this moment, bent forward. Her curls fell over her cheeks while she breathed. "Good morning, Miss Meadows," and she mentioned towards rather than handed to her mistress a beautiful yellow chrysanthemum. Now the meaning of stalked, which I have mentioned, is not relevant. Stalked actually is to stride somewhere in a proud, stiff or angry manner, to move silently or threateningly through a place. So she moved over to the piano, and what happened next? Mary, the beautiful little girl, she greeted Miss Meadows and gave her beautiful yellow flowers. Chrysanthemum is a type of flower. And what does it say next? This little ritual of the flower had been gone through for ages and ages, quite a term and a half. So, from a long time, this was a ritual. Miss Meadows would enter the music hall, and this beautiful young girl called Mary would greet her and give these flowers, which Miss Meadows would accept wholeheartedly. It was as much part of the lesson as opening the piano. So as I said, this ritual of this beautiful little girl called Mary giving chrysanthemum to Miss Meadows was from a long time in place. But what happened? But this morning, instead of taking it up, instead of tucking it into her belt, while she leant over Mary and said, "Thank you, Mary, how very nice. Turn to page 32. So usually Miss Meadows would accept the flowers and tuck it into her belt and then start the class. But this time she did not tuck those flowers into her belt, but she just said, "Thank you, very nice. Let's go to page 32. Now it was very obvious that she ignored Mary's flower. What was Mary's horror when Miss Meadows totally ignored the chrysanthemum, made no reply to her greeting, but said in a voice of ice, "Page 14 please, and mark the accents well." Even the little child could not understand what had happened to Miss Meadows. Why is she behaving this way? In short, the little beautiful girl Mary was horrified. Staggering moment. Mary blushed until the tears stood in her eyes, but Miss Meadows was gone back to the music stand. Her voice rang through the music hall. Staggering means deeply shocking, astonishing moment. Now, it had been many days since Miss Meadows would sweetly accept the flowers, greet Mary back, praise her, and tuck the flowers in her belt. This was the first time that she didn't do that. This was the first time that she took the flowers, kept them aside, and went back to the stand and started teaching. So she felt so bad, Mary felt so hurt that she was almost about to cry. Miss Meadows said, "Page 14. We will begin page 14. A lament." What is a lament? Difference? It is a passionate grief of something, it is an expression of grief or sorrow or sadness. So there was a chapter in their music books called Lament. Some people call it Lament. And in this beautiful autumn morning, Miss Meadows was teaching Lament. Why is that so? She says, "Now girls, you ought to know by this time, we shall take it together, not in parts, all together." And without expression, she asked the girls to sing the whole thing together, not line by line. So to begin with, she asks the girl to sing it plainly. She asks the girl to sing it without any expression or feelings. Just sing it as it is. The song name is Lament. Sing it, though quite simply, beating time with the left hand. So how do you usually give beats? You snap with your left hand and sing so that you feel the rhythm. So similarly, Miss Meadows asked the girls to give beats with the left hand and sing along together. She raised the baton, she tapped the music stand twice. Down came Mary on the opening chord. Down came all those left hands beating in the air, and in chimed those young mournful voices. So now, according to the orders of the teacher, Miss Meadows, the girls are about to start. So somebody played the opening chord. It's none other than the pianist. And all the girls were ready to give beats with the left hands. And all together they started singing in mournful voices. What is mourning? Mourning is nothing but crying, expressing grief. And why not? The song name was Lament. The song is meant to express grief. And so the girls would do exactly the same. Fast, too fast, fade the roses of pleasure. Soon autumn yields unto winter dear. Fleety, fleety, music's gay measure passes away from the listening ear. See, the lines themselves are having a sad meaning. Fade the roses of pleasure, which means pleasure is going away. Pleasure is fading off. That's the first line. Soon the autumn yields unto winter. So winter is usually cold and it represents sadness. So the second line says, autumn will pass by and winter will come very soon. Fleety, fleety. Fleety means rapidly. Music's gay measure. Gay means carefree, light-hearted. So this particular music will soon pass from those ears which are listening. So see, the title is sad, the title is Lament, and the lyrics are also expressing grief, that pleasure will go off, winter will come soon, and very rapidly this music will also pass by. Good heavens, what could be more tragic than that lament? Every note was a sigh, a sob, a groan of awful mournfulness. Yes, I totally agree. You and I will agree on the fact that these lyrics are absolutely very tragic. They just indicate mournfulness. They just indicate grief. Right? What could be more sad than all these lines, passing of joy and coming of winter, and that too rapidly, and fading off of music. Miss Meadows lifted her arms in the white gown and began conducting with both hands. I feel more and more strongly that our marriage would be a mistake, she beat. So by now all the girls had sung the song all together without expression as per the orders of Miss Meadows. And now Miss Meadows was giving instruction for the girls to sing. Because of this particular part, I had to reread this chapter again and again. So see, here is the scenario. You already know where all these events are taking place. It's a music hall, right? There are instruments, especially the piano. You can imagine a music teacher with a baton in hand, and you can imagine girls of different ages standing in front of the music teacher. Now, the music teacher is upset. Right? She is not into the moment. She is not into teaching completely. So her mind is wandering off into the letter and also is present at the same time into the hall. So while she lifted her arms in the white gown that she was wearing and began conducting with both the hands, her mind had all those thoughts running, all the lines running which were there in the letter. I feel more and more strongly that our marriage would be a mistake. She beat. And while her mind is busy in thinking about the letter, in the present situation, the girls are singing. So therefore it says, and the voices cried, Fleety, ah, Fleety. Then again, her mind is thinking, what could have possessed him to write such a letter? What could have led up to it? So what made this man who was going to be the husband of Miss Meadows write such a pathetic letter? How can he write a letter stating that he cannot be into a married relationship? It had come out of nothing. So everything was going fine with that man and Miss Meadows. All of a sudden he writes such a letter. Now all these thoughts are running in Miss Meadows' mind, but she is at the same time teaching the girls, right? So he had also written another letter. So his last letter had been all about a fumed oak bookcase. Now this is just a bookcase in which you keep books, but the color is fumed oak, which means a dark brown color. He had brought for our books a natty little hall stand he had seen, a very neat affair with carved owl on the bracket holding 3 hat brushes in its claws. So while she is teaching the girls, she is questioning in her mind, how can this man write such a letter? His last letter, the letter before this letter, talked about the things that he's going to buy in their house after marriage, which included this bookcase and hall stand. And when she read the letter which talked about the things which they are gonna buy after marriage, Miss Meadows smiled at that. So like a man to think one needed 3 hat brushes. Now, while she is thinking all these things, the girls in the present situation, they sang from the listening ears, sang the voices. So they completed the song once again. So first time they completed the song here. This was the second time they completed the song. And what's happening with Miss Meadows? She is drifting into her thoughts while she is teaching the girls. Now in the present situation, as she felt that the girls had already completed the second time, she said once again, but let me ask you friends, is Miss Meadows really listening to those girls who are putting their heart and soul into this song called Lament, who are completely into sadness to make this song justifiable? No, Miss Meadows is thinking about something else. She is not into the music hall physically and mentally. She might be there just physically, but mentally she is into the letter. So she said, once again, keep on singing, but this time in parts, still without expression. She ordered the girls, do not express, just keep on singing. Fast, too fast, with a gloom of contraltos added, one could scarcely help shuddering. So what is a contralto? It is the lowest female singing voice. So Miss Meadows states that when you have this lowest female singing voice in place, one could not tremble out of fear. The girls then sang, Fade the roses of pleasure. Then her mind again drifted off into the past. Last time he had come to see her, Basil, her fiance's name, had worn a rose in his buttonhole. How handsome he had looked in that bright blue suit with that dark red rose. And he knew it too. He couldn't help knowing it. First he stroked his hair, then his mustache. His teeth gleamed when he smiled. Now while the girls are singing the song for the third time, Miss Meadows is thinking about when his fiancée had come to see her and what was he wearing. So she's thinking about how handsome he looked, how nicely he was dressed when he first came to see her. And then Basil tells Miss Meadows that the headmaster's wife keeps on asking me to dinner. It's a perfect nuisance. I never get an evening to myself in that place. Miss Meadows said, "Cannot you refuse it?" He said, "Oh well, it doesn't do for a man in my position to be unpopular." Looks like Basil hates going to dinner in the evening at headmaster's place, and he expresses this to Miss Meadows. Miss Meadows suggests if he can refuse the offer. Then he says, "I cannot reject it. I have to go because I'm very popular and it is my obligation. I just cannot reject. I have to go to dinner in that place even if I hate it." And what was happening with those girls? She continued singing. They all continued singing. So they sang, "Music's gay measure," wailed the voices. Wailing is again crying. The willow trees outside the high narrow windows waved in the wind. They had lost half their leaves. The tiny ones that clung wriggled like fishes caught on a line. Here we get to know the type of windows the classroom had. They were high, they were narrow, and if you looked outside that window, you could see willow trees, the meaning of willow written on the right side. And because of autumn, half of the leaves had gone and only the smaller leaves remained. It looked as if little fishes caught the line, little fishes caught the stem of the tree. And here Miss Meadows thought about the specific line in the letter which stated, "I'm not a marrying man," which means I'm not a man suitable for marriage. The voices were silent, the piano waited. Now this line is important. The voices were silent, the piano waited. Why? Because the girls had sung the same lines with a lot of grief for the third time. But Miss Meadows was not actually listening, did not pay attention. Her mind was into the letter and thinking about her to-be fiancé. "Quite good," said Miss Meadows, but still in such a strange, stony tone that she made the younger girls positively frightened. Such a stony tone that the younger girls began to feel positively frightened. These girls, these students were accustomed to Miss Meadows being sweet and nice and all sugary. But because of the hopelessness that was there in her heart, because of her life not in shape, she was passing on that hopelessness to the students who were never able to believe. In fact, because of the kind of the voice Miss Meadows was speaking with, they had started feeling frightened. But now that we know it, we shall take it with expression, as much expression as you can put it. Think of the words, girls. Use your imaginations. "Fast, too fast," cried Miss Meadows. "That ought to break out a loud song forte, a lament." So now Miss Meadows is asking the girls to sing with expression. Until now they sang without expression, but now Miss Meadows is exactly telling the girls how to put in the grief, how to put in the sadness, how to feel the sadness in every line. So the first line she says should be a cry, like, sadness breaking out. And then the second line, winter drear. Make that drear sound as if cold winds were blowing through it. She's asking the girls to stretch drearer as much as they can. Something like drearer. Now, Miss Meadows said this so awfully that Mary Peasley on the music stool wriggled her spine. So it happens that Miss Meadows was passing on her hopelessness to all the girls. And the tone in which she sang drearer made the other girls feel awkward, especially the favorite student, Mary Peasley. She felt so awkward that she started moving around a little bit to feel comfortable. Third line should be one crescendo. What is a crescendo? The loudest point reached in gradually increasing sound. Fleety, music's gay measure. She said, sing the third line by gradually increasing your voice, gradually increasing the sound. And then she asked the girls to break on the first word of the last line, passes. And then on the word away, you must begin to die, to fade, until the listening ear is nothing more than a faint whisper. You can slow down as much as you like, almost on the last line. Now please. So, in this paragraph we get to know how Miss Meadows wanted the girls to put in more and more life to the song, more and more feel in the song. Add sadness, she said, and she asked the girls to sing each and every line specifically. And she said it with so much sadness, so much grief, that the girls had started feeling uncomfortable. Again, the two light taps. She lifted her arms again. Fast, too fast. And the idea of settling down fills me with nothing but disgust. So you see, in the moment, she's in the hall and trying to listen to the girls. She gave her advice in a very stony voice. The girls have started singing, and when they start singing, Miss Meadows' mind drifts off into the letter and how her to-be fiancé rejected the marriage offer. So she thinks about the line, the idea of settling down fills me with nothing but disgust. Disgust was what he had written. That was as good as to say their engagement was definitely broken off. So when she received this letter, Miss Meadows knew that this man is never gonna marry her, because marriage was a disgust to this man, and she felt even more miserable. Broken off their engagement, people had been surprised enough that she had got engaged. So already when she declared the news of her own engagement, people around her, her relatives and her friends were all surprised. How can Miss Meadows get engaged, right? And she's thinking about the science mistress whom she hated. The science mistress would not believe it at first. What would she not believe? She would not believe that Miss Meadows' engagement had broken off. But nobody had been surprised as she. Nobody had been as surprised as she. So it turns out that Miss Meadows was 30 years old, and her to-be husband, who rejected the marriage proposal, was 25 years old only. And that was nothing more than a miracle. It had been a miracle, simply a miracle, to hear him say, as they walked home from church that very dark night. So here we get to know how they fell in love. So once upon a time, while they attended church prayers, Miss Meadows and the boy, Basil, they walked together to Miss Meadows' home because it was a dark night, and they fell in love. And this guy, he told Miss Meadows that, somehow or the other, I've got fond of you. And he had taken hold of the end of her ostrich feather boa. So this is what an ostrich feather boa looks like. Something that you wear it on the neck. And that boy, while she told Miss Meadows that he was fond of her, holded her cloth, held her ostrich feather boa. And while she was thinking about how they fell in love, while she was virtually in the past, presently she heard the girls singing "Passes Away from the Listening Ear," which is the last line of the song Lament. Repeat, said Miss Meadows. More expression, girls, once more. Fast, too fast. Now see, this is, I think, the 5th time that the girls were singing. Here is the first time when she introduced what they were gonna study for the morning. Alright, next is here where she says once again. So second time, and then the third time when she says quite good. And then she says, alright, so this was the first time when she introduced the chapter. This is the second time when she lifted her arms and made the girls sing. Alright. Once again, where she says is the third time. this is the fourth time when she says quite good, and now where we are is the fifth time. And finally, she is making the girls repeat the song once again. So what happens when you make someone sing such a sad song? The girls were not adults, they were still young, and the older girls, maybe around 15 years of age, they turned crimson. Well, what is the meaning of someone turning crimson? They became flushed through embarrassment. They felt embarrassed. What is this? How many times do we have to sing the same songs? The younger girls started crying because they were not able to understand why they have to sing such a sad song. Big spots of rain blew against the windows, and one could hear the willows whispering, "Not that I do not love you." So, there is this music hall, there is Miss Meadows and the girls, and they are constantly singing a sad song. At the same time, on the window pane, there is rain, and there is wind, and the trees are whispering, meaning the wind is crashing with the leaves and you could hear the whisper. And on the other side, Mrs. Meadows' mind is thinking about the letter, about the line which stated, "Not that I do not love you." "But my darling, if you love me," thought Miss Meadows, "I don't mind how much it is. Love me as little as you like." But she knew he did not love her, not to have cared enough to scratch out the word disgust so that she could not read it. So, at first, she thought, "Love me as little as you like." But then she was sure that the boy did not love her, because if the boy loved Miss Meadows, then he would have removed the word disgust nicely so that the one who reads cannot make out that the word is disgust. So Miss Meadows come to a conclusion that the boy did not love her. The girls at the backdrop are singing, "Soon autumn yields into winter drear." She would have to leave the school. So now, when the girls are singing at the backdrop, Miss Meadows is thinking she would have to leave the school. She could never face the science mistress or the girls after it got known. After what got known? After the fact that Miss Meadows is single. So Miss Meadows is thinking about what would happen when everybody got to know that Basil rejected marriage. She would have to disappear somewhere. And the girls at the backdrop are singing, "Passes away." The voice began to die, to fade, to whisper, to vanish, just like Miss Meadows had asked them to. So the girls gave 100% justice to this song. They sang exactly how Miss Meadows had asked them to. So till now, the trend that we have seen in all these paragraphs is Miss Meadows is upset. She would constantly ask the girls to sing, and while they sang, Miss Meadows would drift into the letter, into the statements, into the past, into the future. And now what happens? Suddenly a door opened. A little girl in blue walked fuzzily up the aisle, hanging her head, biting her lips, and twisting the silver bangle on her red little wrist. So while Miss Meadows was training these girls, an anxious little girl walked up the aisle. Now you know what an aisle is. It is a passage from where you can walk, and on your sides will be the audience or people sitting. She was young, so she was biting her lips and twisting the bangle which was there on the wrist, just like younger girls do. She came up the steps and stood before Miss Meadows. "Well, Monica, what is it?" "Oh, if you please, Miss Meadows," said the little girl, gasping. "Miss Wyatt wants to see you in the mistress's room." "Very well," said Miss Meadows. And she called to the girls, "I shall put you on your honor to talk quietly when I am away." But they were too subdued to do anything else. Most of them were blowing their noses. So, what happened here? A little girl came into the music hall and said that Miss Wyatt wants to see you. Can you please come to Miss Wyatt for some time? So Miss Meadows said, "Okay, I'll come with you." And at the same time, while she's leaving the music hall, she told the girls that I'll leave you free for some time until I come back. But were the girls in position to relax themselves? No. The girls were tired of singing the same song again and again and again. So, therefore, it's written most of them were blowing their noses, which means most of them were crying. And when you cry, what happens? Your nose starts running. So, they were blowing their noses already. The corridors were silent. They echoed to Miss Meadows' steps. Now, why was the corridor silent and cold? They were silent because the girls were perplexed about Miss Meadows' behavior. The headmistress sat at her desk for a moment. She did not look up. She was, as usual, disentangling her eyeglasses, which had got caught in her lace tie. So, who was the headmistress? None other than Miss Wyatt, who called Miss Meadows. What was she doing? She was busy in disentangling her eyeglasses, who were usually stuck in her lace tie. And she told Miss Meadows when she came to meet her, "Sit down, Miss Meadows," she said very kindly. And then she picked up a pink envelope from the blotting pad. What is a blotting pad? A pad consisting of several layers of blotting paper. "I sent for you just now because this telegram has come for you." So she made Miss Meadows sit down in the chair in her room, and then she picked an envelope from the blotting pad, from a case of envelopes, and then she said, "I sent a little child to call you at my room because I've got this telegram which is addressed to you, which is for you." A telegram for me, Miss White? Now, thoughts started popping up in Miss Meadows' mind. Basil, had he committed suicide? Decided Miss Meadows. Her hand flew out, but Miss White held the telegram back at a moment. "I hope it's not a bad news," she said, so more than kindly. And Miss Meadows tore it open. Now, why would a headmistress interrupt the classes and urgently call a teacher to their room because of a simple telegram? Now, this was the very reason why Miss Meadows felt if Basil committed suicide. Miss White told Miss Meadows, "I hope it's not something bad. I hope it's not a bad news. This telegram that I've got, I hope it has some good news in it." And Miss Meadows tore open the letter, and it was from Basil, her fiancé who rejected marriage and the idea of marriage. What was written in the letter? "Pay no attention to letter. Must have been mad. But hat stand today. Basil." Now this line is the climax of the chapter, because in this line, Basil, who had rejected the idea of marriage, is telling Miss Meadows that forget that letter, forget whatever I have written. Actually, I was mad at that time and I didn't know what to write, and I just wrote it down just like that. Just ignore and disregard my letter. "I have brought the hat stand which I was talking about today," she read. She could not take her eyes off the telegram. She constantly read it and she could not believe what she had read, because right from the morning, right from the moment she entered the class, she was thinking that Basil had rejected marriage, and therefore she was completely upset and completely out of mood and passing on the hopelessness to the girls. But here she got another telegram which indicated that Basil was ready for the marriage. And now let's see what happens. "I do hope it's nothing very serious," said Miss White, leaning forward. "Oh no, thank you, Miss White," blushed Miss Meadows. Now Miss Meadows is blushing out of joy because Basil would be marrying her, and therefore she says, "No, it's not a bad news and everything is under control. It's nothing bad at all. And she gave an apologetic little laugh. She laughed at Miss White. "It's from my fiancé, saying that there was a pause. "I see," said Miss White, and another pause. Then, "You have 15 minutes more of your class, Miss Meadows, haven't you?" So usually in this school, if a telegram has been received, it would mean something big has happened. Something very depressing had happened. And therefore Miss White is also concerned, is also curious, and asks Miss Meadows if something bad has happened. To that, Miss Meadows was gonna tell Miss Wyatt about the letter, about what was written in that letter. She could not complete it, but she just blushed and she laughed a little bit. And to that, Miss Wyatt, the headmistress, asked her if she had time left for her class after receiving and reading this telegram. Yes, Miss Wyatt, she got up. She half ran towards the door. Why did Miss Meadows half ran towards the door? Because there was a twist in her feelings. Her hopelessness had been replaced with a lot of hopes. Oh, just 1 minute, Miss Meadows, said Miss Wyatt. I must say, I don't approve of my teachers having telegrams sent to them in school hours, unless in case of very bad news such as death, explained Miss Wyatt, or very serious accident or something to that effect. Good news, Miss Meadows, will always keep, So this is a warning from the headmistress straight to Miss Meadows that telegrams will not be accepted for casual conversations, for simple messages or good news. Why did she warn Miss Meadows? Because obviously the telegram did not have a bad news or something big. It was just a simple note from Miss Meadows' boyfriend, that is Basil. So Miss Meadows gets a warning. Miss Wyatt clarifies that only if there's something very serious, then you will be given a telegram. If there's a good news, then the telegram will be given to you only after the school hours later on when you're completely free. And she says, good news will always stay there. If something is urgent, you can go. But good news always stay there and you can always wait to receive the good news. On the wings of hope, of love, of joy, Miss Meadows sped back to the music hall, up the aisle, up the steps, over the piano. So now you see the sudden twist in feelings. How did she enter the hall when she was completely depressed and shattered? Well, she was throwing a grimace at everyone she met, and also she passed on the sadness to the girls, but now she had a lot of hopes. So therefore, wings of hope. With the wings of hope, she started flying in the air, out of love, out of joy, and she ran back to the music hall out of excitement that her marriage is gonna take place with the same man, Basil. She would not have to leave the school. She would not have to face anyone who thought that the marriage was a miracle. She went up the aisle, up the steps, over to the piano quickly, and she said, "Page 32, Mary," she said. Page 32. And picking up the yellow chrysanthemum, she held it to her lips to hide her smile. You see how, because of a person's thought, his or her actions change. Now she was feeling happy. Now she was feeling delightful. So she changed the song completely from the song called Lament. Now she had started teaching something else, which was on page 32. She asked her favorite student Mary to turn the page to page 32, and she also received the flowers, chrysanthemum, which she had placed it aside in the beginning of the class. And she had started smiling, and her smile was hidden by the flowers. Then she turned to the girls, rapped with her baton. Page 32, girls, page 32. Now these are the lyrics which were written in page 32. We come here today with flowers overladen with baskets of fruit and ribbons to boot, to congratulate. So, after turning to page 32, the girls started singing. But what happened? Stop, cries Miss Meadows. This is awful, this is dreadful. And she beamed at the girls. So what is the meaning of beamed? Beamed is nothing but to transmit in a specific direction. So she looked at the girls in a specific way and asked, what is the matter with you all? Think, girls, think of what you're singing. Use your imagination. With flowers overladen, basket fruits and ribbons to boot. And congratulate, Miss Meadows broke off. Don't look so doleful, girls. Because of a single-lined letter, Miss Meadows is so happy that she asked her own students, she asked the girls not to look so sorrowful, sing happily. It ought to sound warm, joyful, eager, congratulate. Once more, quickly, all together. Now then. And this time, Miss Meadows' voice sounded over all the other voices, full, deep, glowing with expression. So because she was full of hopes, her hopelessness, sadness, despair, anxiety was replaced with joy, happiness, glee, expectations, and with the thoughts of settling down with the person she loved. Friends, I hope you understood this chapter. Let me summarize. It starts off with the protagonist, Miss Meadows, who's a music teacher in a school, and she is completely shattered and sad because she has received a letter from her boyfriend stating that marriage for him was a complete disgust, and disgust was replaced with the word regret. Now this made Miss Meadows completely shattered and she felt hopeless, and even then she entered the music hall and started her classes. She chose the song which reflected her feelings. The song name was Lament, which means sadness. The lyrics were also tragical, and she made the girls sing multiple times, 5 to 6 times, and every time the girls started singing, Miss Meadows' mind would wander off in the past, thinking about how she fell in love with that man in the present letter which she had just read before coming to the music hall, and in the future what would happen if her marriage broke off. And not realizing that she had made the girl sorrowful and grim, she continuously made the girls sing the song again and again, first without feelings and then with feelings, so much that some of the girls started crying, and the older girls were a little embarrassed. All of a sudden, a little girl comes into the hall and asks Miss Meadows to meet the headmistress. The headmistress gives Miss Meadows a telegram which is from Miss Meadows' boyfriend Basil, and Basil has written that forget my previous letter. I have got the stand which I was referring to you earlier, and this letter meant that Basil was still marrying Miss Meadows and her marriage was not broken off. Now this made her feel hopeful, delighted, joyful, and she ran back to the music hall, and immediately she climbed the platform and the stage, and immediately she changed the song from Lament to something that had lyrics which were positive, optimistic, and she also told the girls not to be so sorrowful. Now she realized what the girls were feeling, but previously she did not, because she was engrossed in her own sadness. Friends, I hope you have understood this chapter. If not, I am always here to help. Do mention your doubts in the comment section and I will be happy to help. I thank you and I hope you have a great day.